She also is the Time Magazine, last year, I guess, was the Time Magazine Person of the Year. Now, the reason I start with her, besides the fact that she's inspiring, is that she's a very unlikely change agent. She's basically was an outsider, someone who had a lot of disabilities, actually. And despite that, look at what she's been able to do. She's made an incredible impact. So now let's go into our own tradition and talk about Moses. Moses was also an outsider. You'll recall that he didn't exactly fit in with his birth family because he was raised by a foster family, but he didn't really fit in with them either. And he also had a disability. We're told that he had a speech impediment. And did he want to be a leader? No, he definitely did not want to be. You'll recall that when the angel speaks to him from the burning bush, he says, please, I don't want to go back and speak to Pharaoh. Please send somebody else. And in Exodus, we read a lot about his failures. He tells the Hebrews that he's going to help them, but after he goes to Pharaoh and he's not successful, that backfires. He loses the trust of the people. And yet, Moses is remembered as the greatest leader that we've ever had. Now, like Moses and Greta, we face an overwhelming situation. We depend on fossil fuels for energy, and they are causing climate change. I was looking all around for the perfect graphic about that, just to summarize it. We are burning oil, gas, and coal, which releases carbon dioxide, and that accumulates in the atmosphere. And that forms a blanket around the earth, trapping the heat of the sun. I happened to watch this fantastic movie just last night, The Human Element, which I recommend. You can actually watch it for free. Up until today, they made it free for Earth Week, so go online and find it, and you can, I think it's through Interfaith Power and Light, you can watch it for free. And in that film, I think his name is Blaylock, James Blaylock, he actually sends a balloon up to take photographs, and he said he himself was shocked that it only took half an hour for that balloon to travel right through our atmosphere and basically out into out into the solar system, out into space. So that's how thin our atmosphere is. It seems huge to us, but we're affecting it. The last time I looked a few days ago, the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere was up to 416 parts per million. You can look yourself on co2.earth and see what it is every day. And we know that the safe level is 350 parts per million, so we've far exceeded it. And we're also seeing the impacts of climate change already, even on our own community as Jews here in the United States. The wildfires in California, they say that the wildfire season has increased by 75 days. It's really a lot. In 2017 and 2018, several Jewish camps burned down to the ground. And again in 2019, schools and synagogues were closed because of the wildfires. Maybe you remember Hurricane Harvey that hit Houston. 2,000 Jewish families there lost their homes. And the Federation estimated at the time that it was going to cost $40 to $50 million to recover from that. And of course, Israel is very highly impacted by climate change because it's one of the driest areas of the world, and it's being impacted by drought. They call it the Middle East a climate hotspot. I heard recently a talk by Gidon Bromberg from Eco Peace in Israel, a wonderful organization, and he explained that because last year the Kinneret, the Sea of Galilee, hit rock bottom, that the government of Israel is actually building a pipeline to take water from the Mediterranean, which is being desalinated at a very high cost in money and in fossil fuels to use for the energy, and pumping it up to the Sea of Galilee in order to refill the Sea of Galilee so that it doesn't become polluted by seawater, which could infiltrate into it, and which time it would no longer serve as a reservoir for Israel. So you can just imagine what a big project that is. On the other hand, the positive that he mentioned is that Israel is such a leader in desalination, and Jordan actually has the potential for a lot of producing a lot of solar energy because they have a lot of empty desert that they could build solar energy plants in. So that's an opportunity for cooperation, collaboration, and peace building. So how is climate change impacting your community? Maybe you could put your answers in the chat while I tell you a little bit about what's happening in my community. So I'd like to know what's happening around you. So here in the DC area, one of the places we're experiencing a lot of flooding is in Alexandria. One of the older communities around here was founded in 1749. And the sea level of the Potomac River, where Alexandria sits, has already risen an entire foot. And the waterfront floods hundreds of times a year. I told you I just visited Chicago. In Chicago, all 102 countries were declared agricultural disaster areas last year. John Lou, do we have any comments in the chat?
Oh, it says unmuted. Well, I can't read it because it says you are unmuted by a host right over. All right. Nancy says warmer winters, hotter summers in Pennsylvania, and fewer bees. Mariana also says warmer temperatures and changes in wildlife and plants and number of bees and birds from Dara.
I'm glad you guys mentioned about the warmer weather.
Yeah, and Jonathan says no snow, which is right. We haven't had any.
Oh yeah, we haven't really had any either now that you mention it. The heat waves are, one of the most important impacts that we're seeing all across this country. Happen to write down that in Chicago today, there are 10 dangerous heat days a year. In 2050, they're expecting 60. Wow. I'm sure that's gonna really hit us here in Washington area very, very hard. And as you know, July was the hottest month on planet Earth ever recorded. So it's not a great direction that we're going in. But I'm not here to depress you. I'm here to talk about the future and what we can all do. So after 400 years of slavery, going back to our Exodus story, it was hard for the Hebrews to imagine an alternative. And so it is for us. It's hard for us to imagine that we can turn things around. And these next few years are critical because science tells us that the goal must be 50% reduced emissions by 2030 and net zero by 2050. Very important numbers that we all need to know. 50% by 2030 and net zero by 2050. So what do we do? Well, God told Moses to focus on the vision of the future, that the Hebrews would not only go free, but they would also enter the promised land. Well, they had to wait 40 years for that, but we're lucky. We can start to see the future taking shape. By the way, those 40 years right now, that's what we're in the period of the Jewish calendar when we're immersing ourselves in those 40 years in the counting of the Omer, which is the time between Passover and Shavuot. So it's a great time to focus on the meaning of the journey itself. I'm going to focus on renewable energy right now, but obviously there are other things that we can do as well to address reducing our emissions and slowing down climate change. So this photo is from a wonderful experience that I had. Last summer, I had the opportunity to visit the Block Island Wind Farm, which is off the coast of Rhode Island. I went with an interfaith group that was sponsored by Green Faith, another great organization to connect with. Actually, I believe they're headquartered in New Jersey, not too far from you. So we took a fast ferry out to see these turbines. There are 5 of them, and we were accompanied by several people, but one of the most inspiring was the steward of the Steelworkers Union from Providence. And he told us about how proud the steelworkers were to work on this project. The union actually paid for training so that the men could learn how to, for example, get on and off the helicopters because they had to go out to the work site by helicopter. And he was also very excited to say that most of their work's usually in the summer, but because of this project, a number of the men were able to work all through the winter building what they call the appurtenances for these platforms. So they built the ladders and the platforms and things like that. And then all those appurtenances were actually sent down to Louisiana, where they were attached to the actual platform that the turbines sit on by companies that usually work on oil rigs. So that was just a really inspiring thing to hear about. And then when we got there, we had a ceremony on the deck of the boat, And each religion contributed something, a song from the humanists, a prayer from the Catholics. And there was a rabbi, Rabbi Joel Abraham, who spoke to us. And he talked about how in Hebrew, the word ruach means both breath, like the breath of life, and the wind. And how the wind that gives us life and breath can also bring us clean, safe, renewable energy. It was a very, very inspiring moment. Another example that I like to talk about is the Agahozo Shalom Youth Village. So this is a youth village in Rwanda, and it was, the origin of it was with a friend of mine. We were in Young Judea together, Anne Heyman, and she visited Rwanda and learned about how many orphans there were after the genocide there. And she remembered that in Israel, after the Second World War, they founded these youth villages that they're orphanages, but they're really permanent homes for children who had no family. And she knew that they had learned a lot about how to take care of these children in Israel. And she brought over some of the experts to Rwanda, and they founded this Agahozo Shalom Youth Village. And then she got together with another friend of ours, Yossi Abramowitz, who's a solar entrepreneur in Israel, and they came up with the idea of building a solar field at the youth village. So this would really be a win-win-win, because they would be able to provide, first of all, an income for the youth village, and they would be contributing energy to people in Rwanda, because the vast majority of people in Rwanda have no access to electricity, and also job training for the young people. So they actually were able to build this. It's the first industrial scale solar field in East Africa. And here's, you can see the director of the solar field, just gives you a feeling. And of course, there are many smaller examples, like right here in Virginia, right here in my area, across the river in Virginia, we have a Reform Temple that's just putting solar on its roof right now. And what's special about that is that in Virginia, they don't have very good incentives for installing solar energy. But a company has now developed a crowdfunding campaign so that local people can contribute to nonprofits putting solar on their roofs. And that makes it possible for organizations like congregations to finance solar energy systems. So there's a lot of innovation happening in this space. Now, before I go on to our Eco-Jeopardy game, which we're going to do in just a moment, those are some things that have given me hope. Maybe you could put in the chat some things that have given you hope.
Excuse me, Mirele, and while we're taking this moment to do that, I forgot to mention in the beginning something important and that is that we are recording this program. We are doing that and just want everybody to be aware of it.
And Susan, I will tell you, since you didn't say anything,
Yeah.
I didn't start the recording. We lost about the first 5 minutes because I didn't know what I was supposed to do.
Okay.
So it is recorded, but we lost a little bit of the talk about Greta.
Okay. Thank you, Randy.
Yeah, and
Okay.
and also, Mirele, there are a few more comments that about how does the weather and climate impact our own communities, and there are 3 more that came up after you began your other commentary. From Dara saying agricultural land is not able to grow plants because of saltwater incursion. And Yael writes, earthquakes due to fracking. Grateful for the rain that we've had in LA last week, yet now this week it's 100 degrees.
Wow. We're really, after watching that movie, The Human Element, I'm really worried about you guys in California.
Yeah.
It's really scary.
Yeah.
Okay, so what gives you hope? Do we have any comments about
Yes, they just came up, a few of them. Melody says, seeing how the younger generation cares about this issue. Nancy Meller says, more asthma. And Judy Glatzer is, some hope is the current skies with everything shut down.
Right, we're seeing that nature can recover, and that is an encouraging message and lesson, I think, that we can take out of the current crisis.
True. And Melody says, seeing windmill farms and the rise in electric vehicles and solar energy. Okay, these things are going quickly and they're moving too fast. Okay. Eating less meat has gone up. People are walking and riding bikes, sustainable farming, hemp, concrete, clothing. Love it. And that's it. Zoom calls on, yeah.
That's great. Okay, thank you very much. Those are very great. I like the hemp too. I'm going to go look that up.
Yeah, and
Okay.
Dara, one more comment that I
Sure.
see, 75% of all new electricity added to the grid in the past year was from renewable sources, and that's from Dara.
That's great. That's great. I'm glad you all are tracking the hopeful signs because we really need that. So my message is really that you can be a part of making this vision a reality. And I know your temple's already very involved in this, and probably all of you are individually also. So consider this just another shot in the arm to keep being active. Like Greta and Moses, you may not think of yourself as a leader, but you can certainly do something and be a part of the solution. So now this is the fun part. We're going to explore those solutions a little bit more with some eco-Jeopardy. So this is how we play Jeopardy. I'm going to give you the answer, and you're going to formulate the question. So in the chat, I'd like you to put the question. And unfortunately, no monetary prizes, but it's still inspiring, exciting to think about the possibility. Okay, so here's our example. So the solution is meat, dairy, and eggs. And the answer would be something like, what should I eat less of in order to reduce my own impact on the atmosphere? So you all know, I guess somebody already put that in the chat, that animal agriculture is the single largest source of methane emissions in the United States. And methane is what we call a super pollutant. So it's having an extra damaging impact on the atmosphere. Now you can put your answers in your questions in the chat as we move along. So the next one is responsible credit card. What's the question there? Responsible credit card. Usually when we're in person, we have teams, so it makes it a little easier. But John Lou, we have any tries at this one?
At this point, there is, well, Melody says, could you explain what that is? That was the question.
Anybody want to give it a try? You can guess.
And well, there are credit cards that really are much more eco-friendly. I would not buy a credit card from a gas company, for example.
Very good. So for a question, the question might be, what is something that you can do to reduce your financial investment in fossil fuels?
Yeah.
Probably some of you have heard of breaking up with the big banks. That's a campaign. Or stopping the what do they call it? Stop the money pipeline, which is the money going into investments in fossil fuels. Believe it or not, there's still a lot of money going into building new infrastructure for fossil fuels. Well, you all know about what's going on with fracking in Pennsylvania. So one of the ways that you can actually personally get involved in stopping that money pipeline is to get a responsible credit card. So instead of taking a credit card, having a credit card with one of the big banks, for example, one of the worst ones is JP Morgan Chase, you can have your credit card with a bank that's investing in communities, such as a community development bank or a credit union. And this is something that I've been doing for years. It's really easy, and sometimes it's a little complicated to move all of your other investments, but it's pretty easy to open. They make it really easy to open another credit card and just use that credit card. And then that bank is getting the float on your money, and they're investing it in positive ways. And if you were interested in more information on that, I suggest looking up Green America, which is an organization that brings together green consumers with green businesses. And that's something that also I suggest you tell your friends and family about. It's a really simple step that we can all take.
Yeah, true.
Okay, so now here's another one. Again, you're allowed to guess. The Chazon Seal of Sustainability. Chazon Seal of Sustainability. That's the answer. What's the question? Put it in the chat. And Jean-Lou, we have anybody willing to give it a try?
There's one question here that says, how do we make the temple more green?
Perfect. Thank you so much. How do we make the temple more green?
Yeah, what can
So,
and another is, what can our congregation get to show that we're doing sustainable things for our community?
great, perfect. So the Chazon Seal of Sustainability does exactly what you all guessed at, and it provides a framework to make it easy for Jewish organizations, including congregations, to get involved in sustainability. They offer audits and then a lot of resources and coaching. And this is really important to work on the community level. My motto is, what we can each do as an individual is a drop in the bucket, but what we can do as communities can fill the bucket. So I really applaud you for having this program and for all the work that you're doing to educate your community and get your community involved in solutions. Okay, and our next one is system solutions. So the answer is the 100% Clean Economy Act. 100% Clean Economy Act. Anyone want to give it a try to tell us the question?
One comment here from Dara is, what legislation would push our economy to use 100% clean energy?
Perfect, exactly. And remember, we need to get there to net zero by 2050.
Okay, right. And Angela says, what kind of law can we pass?
Great, perfect.
So
the 100% Clean Economy Act was a bill that was actually introduced in Congress in the fall. And this was a very, was meant to be a kind of a consensus bill, because it actually directed every department of the federal government to come up with their own plan based on their existing authority for how we could get to 100% or net zero, 100% renewables and so on by 2050. And it actually achieved quite a lot of support in Congress. Of course, it would not have had any chance of passing the Senate, so it didn't actually go anywhere. But it was for building investment in these kind of solutions and getting people on board so that eventually, when we have the opportunity, this kind of bill would be able to pass.
Yeah, and Mirele, Susan says, what is the part of the Green New Deal? What is part of, yes.
Yeah, so this is one of the solutions that would be part of the Green New Deal. Wonderful. Okay, so we talked about personal solutions, community level solutions, and then systemic level solutions, which advocacy is one of the most important things that we can do on that level. Okay, so I just wanted to tell you a little bit about my own congregation, a Dot Shalom Reconstructionist congregation, and how we connected all three. This is showing about a campaign that we did in response to some new legislation that was passed in Maryland. Maryland passed a bill allowing for the first time for community solar, which in this case means that a company builds a solar field and then individuals can subscribe to buy their power from this company, kind of like a community CSA, community supported agriculture project, but for electricity instead. And a Jewish entrepreneur in our area was building the first community solar field, and we decided to get in there and support him. And we created a campaign that went on for about 8 months in our congregation to educate people and then get them to actually enroll and subscribe to this community solar field. You know, one of the things we did is we tried to give a lot of kavod, honor, to people who did sign up. So part of the campaign was during Hanukkah. We talked about give yourself the gift of renewable energy for Hanukkah, and we put up the names of everybody who had subscribed at that time. The solar field was built. I'm happy to say we got 65 families to sign up, which was a significant proportion of the number that they needed to go ahead with the field and get the financing and build it. And here we had our own dedication, where we also said the blessing for the son, Oseh Ma'aseh Bereshit. And then building on that, we thought that since people had taken their own personal action by signing up for renewable energy, they would feel more comfortable doing advocacy. And we were able to bring quite a large group to go to the environmental lobby night in the state capitol in Annapolis this year. So that's just showing how we connected the personal, the community level, and the advocacy. Now I'd like to take just a moment to talk about one way that you can get involved, the one that I'm most involved in. We have an organization called Jewish Earth Alliance, and we were founded about a year ago. The idea was that we could see that a breakthrough moment was coming on climate policy. I'm sure you're all aware of how much more climate change has figured in the Democratic primaries with the candidates, and we could see that a lot of legislation was finally being introduced in Congress, and we felt that if we could build up our engagement by the Jewish community and also relationships with members of Congress over the coming, at that time, about year and a half, when the elections happen, and we hopefully will see a more, more fertile ground in Congress, that we would be ready to take advantage of that moment. And I would say that what we're seeing now with the pandemic is the moment has maybe come even sooner than we thought it would come, because there's going to be a lot of investment in the economy, and there's going to be big choices made by Congress about where to send that money. Once they're finished with the actual relief efforts and they get to the economic stimulus, they're going to have a choice. Do they bail out the fossil fuel companies and invest in the old economy, or invest in the new economy, jobs for people, green jobs for people? So what we do is we send out an action alert each month, and communities around the country who are our partners convene their members, and people write their own personal letters to their members of Congress. They send them to us, and then for the past year, we've actually been going on Capitol Hill, personally delivering the letters to the offices of the members of Congress, which gives us the opportunity to meet with staff members, and sometimes the members, the members of Congress themselves, and to build those relationships. And it's really paid off. Actually, the picture here was actually the one with the Earth, was at the climate strike, and that's Representative Eliot Engel, who's from New York. And we happened to run into him at the strike, and because we've been doing this, we were able to say to him, we've met with your staffer, we know Harry personally, we've been working with him, and we'd like to ask you to co-sponsor the 100% Clean Economy Act. And we've, of course, followed up and contacted our participants in New York who'd been writing the letters, and they followed up. And actually, Eliot Engel did co-sponsor the bill, so we were very happy about that. Now this month, we are going to be actually writing about the stimulus for a green economy. We have our action alert out already, and you can find it here on our website, jewishearthalliance.org. I just wanted to show you how easy it is to find it there. Each month, as I said, we send out an action alert, which gives a background information about the issue and a sample letter. So we make it simple for people to participate. And I'm happy to say that Susan has volunteered to collect your letters if you're willing to participate. And if you would like to write, we would encourage you to do so. And the real key to these letters is that we share our personal stories. We're not professional lobbyists. We're not experts in the policy. We want to let our members know that we care about these issues and that they speak to us personally. So I just wanted to share an example of what one of our activists in Bloomington, Indiana wrote to their member of Congress. Susan, maybe you could read it for us? Unmute yourself.
Yes, terrific. Dear Congressman Hollingsworth, I worked for over 2 decades on poverty alleviation, in particular microfinance, in some of the poorest countries. As early as 2008, I could see that catastrophic climate change would wipe out the impact of my work. After 2 Kenyan colleagues confided to me that they had lost children to malaria, I felt compelled to shift my focus to changing attitudes and actions on climate change. I conveyed these stories to my congregation, Congregation Beth Shalom, which has since taken action to curb our carbon emissions, including installing 24.9 kilowatts of solar panels on our roof. Respectfully yours, Madeline Hirschland, Bloomington, Indiana.
Yeah, I just want to mention that. Thank you so much, Susan. I want to mention that Congressman Hollingsworth is extremely conservative. But even so, we've been able to meet with his staff on a couple of occasions, actually. And it's really, really important that he is hearing from constituents who care about climate change. So you can write in your letter something about why you're concerned, what you're seeing with climate change, what you're doing. So I'd like to take just a moment to say, if you were going to write to your member of Congress about the green stimulus, in other words, that we should be investing in the green economy as we try to restore the financial health of our country and the jobs for people who've lost them, what could you personally write about what you're seeing with climate change or what you're doing? Would you put that in the chat? Just a line or two is enough. It doesn't have to be as long as Matey's. Shamlu, do we have any responses?
I see, now one just came up, from Susan. Erosion in my own backyard caused by 3 major floods within 18 months.
Wow.
Eating less meat and flying less from Mariana. Dara, there are now 3 times more clean energy jobs in Pennsylvania than there are coal and fossil fuel related jobs. A clean energy means more jobs for Americans. And Jonathan volunteered to study species extinction in the Amazon. So I think
Wow.
there's one more that's coming in. And Stephanie, the lives of my generation depend on it.
That's great. Those are great things to put in the letter, and they can't hear them too many times.
Right.
Unfortunately, I mean, part of the reason we started this project is that we know that the industry lobbyists for the fossil fuel companies and other industries that use, heavy users of fossil fuels, they're there every day, if not every hour, talking to the members of Congress. So we felt that by showing up on a regular basis every month, we could, start to provide a little bit of balance. And we're really looking for encouraging people, I should say, to participate on a regular basis, write consistently. It's amazing how after just a few months, the members of the staffers of the members of Congress, they know us personally. They're willing to come out and talk to us even when we don't have an appointment. And they're interested in what we have to say.
Well, that's wonderful. I have 2 more came up.
Okay.
From Melody, I have purchased a plug-in vehicle. I'm eating a plant-based diet, and I want my grandchildren to have a healthy, warm earth. Dara writes, industrial scale solar and wind energy are now cheaper than fossil fuel-based energies. Check out this great video by college students about why we must divest from fossil fuels. And I hope everybody can see that. She has the YouTube on there.
Very good. Look in the chat and you can take a look at that video. Yeah. That's great. I love to write in my letters. I'm doing more my part. What about you? That's the way I put it.
That's
that's sort of that works almost every month, no matter what the issue is.
Mirele, what I want to mention that Jewish Earth Alliance, what you've done, it's made it so easy for us to become involved. That I keep touting the model that Mirele has created is very efficient. And so when you think you're so overwhelmed by all that needs to be done, this is a great way to take part, have impact every single month. And as you said, you develop these relationships. And I want to mention that we have in PA, I just forgot their name, the group, the Conservation Voter Group. And if you want to find out who your representatives are, if you're not sure, also in the area, the action letter area, you can look up who your particular representatives are. And what the Conservation Voter site does is actually shows their track record. So I happen to look up Senator Toomey and Senator Casey for Pennsylvania, and it should come as no surprise to anyone who's followed them that the score that Senator Toomey got was 0 for 2019, 5% lifetime score, whereas Senator Casey in 2019 has 100% positive score. And it lists all of the legislation and how each person voted. And for a lifetime, there was only one piece of legislation that for whatever reason he didn't vote for. So he has a 93% score. And that'll help you know how to gear your own letter. So for the February issue, Saving the Tongass National Forest, I wrote the same letter to both because the legislation was still pending, and I wrote something, thank you for considering supportive action. So you can just write even that, even for somebody very negative, thank you for considering supportive action.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. Thank you so much for adding all of that. And which reminds me to say that Pennsylvania is extremely important, as you know. And we would really love to have your participation. And I think Susan is thinking of convening a group, so you can all write your letters together, perhaps virtually for now, and hopefully eventually in person. So that makes it much easier when you do it together. You can share ideas, and of course, it's much easier just to get to it and have it not fall down on your to-do list.
And somebody on our chat, Angela, I think mentioned perhaps we can do something after this. And as simple as coffee, coffees together, whether it's at somebody's house or meeting at some place, coffee place, and and seeing what we could do collectively in our respective communities is wonderful. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Wonderful. So let me just finish up so we still have a few times for questions. I just wanted to also mention why I think it's so important that Jews participate and that we participate as people of faith. What we're told on Capitol Hill is that religious people who are coming in from the perspective of their faith, really walk in a different door to those offices. And we're listened to in a different way. We have a different perspective. They expect to hear the environmental organizations, with their paid staff, to come in and, know the bills in and out and be advocating for them. But they don't really expect to hear people coming and talking about how their faith compels them to do this, and that we're listened to in a different way. I think that as Jews, we also have something very special, which is that our history has taught us to have faith in the future. And Exodus, which I referred to previously, is our foundational story. And that's the story of a small, weak nation of slaves that won freedom from a powerful empire. Throughout our history, we have faced existential threats, and we have risen to the occasion. We are very resilient, and I think we're seeing that now with the COVID-19 crisis. What's happening with all of our communities? We're incredibly resilient. So you can be a part of the solution to climate change. You don't need to receive a call from God like Moses did at the burning bush. And actually, if we read the story closely, we see that Moses became a change agent way before that angel called to him. The first thing that we learn about him after his birth is that he went out and he saw the suffering of the Hebrews. He saw an Egyptian beating a slave. And he looked around. The Torah says he looked ko vacho, here and there. And he saw that no one was there. And then he killed that Egyptian and buried him in the sand. Now the obvious meaning is that he was looking around to see if anyone was watching before he killed the Egyptian. But our commentators say that maybe he was actually looking to see if anyone else was going to take action. My rabbi, one of my rabbis, Rabbi Sid Schwartz, spoke on this story, and he said that this was Moses's bar mitzvah. Why? Because in that moment, Moses had to decide what he was going to do. He became an adult and took on the adult responsibility at that moment. Well, I'm not asking you to take the risk that Moses did, but I am asking you to open your eyes to see what's happening, to look around you, and to take action and do what only you, in your personal situation, can do. Thank you. And we can take some questions now. Please put them in the chat, or maybe Jean-Luc, maybe you want to, or I'm not sure who's in control. if you want, you could
Want me to
unmute.
unmute everybody? Was that going to be okay? All right. I can do it.
Yeah,
Raise your hand, maybe.
there are a couple of ones that I would like to read from Nancy Beller, that I reuse plastics and look for ways to recycle common household trash, such as cosmetic containers, toothpaste tubes, toothbrushes, CDs, and old diskettes. And Dara says that her previous comment was incorrect, that there are 3 times the clean energy jobs as fossil fuel jobs. Well, that's wonderful. You know, I think more people need to know that. I don't, and Ken, here is, while the United States is making strides and Europe is very advanced, what happens when China, India, Indonesia, and Nigeria move into the 21st century and their people want cars, air conditioners, etc.? So much more energy needs to be produced. Hopefully it's created by renewable sources and not coal and oil. Well, yes.
That's right. And if you want to make sure that that happens, I go back to the financing. One of the things you can do is to get involved in the Stop the Money pipeline, so that the money, not only from individual, businesses and investors, but from the international finance groups and organizations, don't go to fossil fuels anymore and only go to renewable energy. We know that renewable energy now is cheaper to put in renewable energy. And we need distributed energy, which means energy that people can, that's generated locally, because that makes the whole system much more resilient in the face of extreme weather. So there's really a lot to be done in that area, and I encourage you to get involved.
I have a question. I put it in before. I don't know which companies are actually renewable energy, and I was wondering if you can recommend companies that you know that are renewable energy, so I can switch to them and not be conned by, oh, we do renewable energy, but they're kind of not. If you have any recommendation, I would like to switch to renewable energy that are real renewable energies.
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. I want to just mention in that context, I'm an environmental psychologist. And one of the things we've learned is that some of these changes are hard to make because people can become overwhelmed. There's too much information out there, maybe too many choices being offered to people. And that's something where a congregation can really be very helpful by sorting through the information, those who have the expertise, and then making some recommendations so that people can make a switch like that more easily. Now, this is something that is very locally determined. So I'm guessing there's someone on this call who can make a recommendation about how to switch to a renewable energy electricity provider in your area. Is there someone who knows?
Dara, do you happen to?
Yeah, you can go to makebenproud.com, and they list our local PICO third-party alternatives that are using wind and solar, and what their various prices are.
And actually, that's on. I'm just going to interject. I'm going to send everybody who participated today the link to our mini challenge for the earth that was sent out to our own congregants. We're asking everybody to pick one of 3 challenges. There was a 4th, which was to participate in Earth Day live stream, but instead of that, I may alter it to say, listen to the film that Dara's son actually created with another student at Penn. They're very, very active in the fossil fuel-free divestment movement, and you can follow their theme of divest from the bad, invest in the good. So switching to green power to power your home is one challenge you can accept. Second is to put your money where your values are. 3 would be to listen to the film. 4 would be to adopt a plant-based diet at least 2 days per week. And that will also come with a reminder that we're going to have a follow-up program on May 17th that Mary Ann is going to lead, and that is how food choices affect climate change. Okay, that was my commercial. Okay,
It's coming, and then Mary Ann has her hand up, guys. So.
Okay, wait 1 second. We're going to also send a follow-up survey on May 15th The surveys are anonymous, so you track yourself, but we want to really be able to aggregate everybody's responses and see what collective impact we've made through these very basic choices in only 3 weeks' time. So please participate, everybody. And Marianne has had her hand up. So, Marianne?
Yes, I wonder if there are any tips for how to galvanize more members of synagogues to get involved in this issue.
Well, that's a big question. I won't try to answer it fully, but I will say that over the years, having been working on this in the Jewish community for a long time, I have become more and more enamored of community organizing. And there's a real, expertise on how to mobilize people in the community organizer world. And I would look around for some training on community organizing. Right now, I know in our area, there's one interfaith organization, the Interfaith Partners for the Chesapeake, that's offering training for green team leaders. And it's based on the real science of community organizing. And we actually, I might be able to send you, we did one session with a community organizing trainer for leaders for Jewish Earth Alliance, just an hour, but it was, it's basically a 2-week, if you really go for the training, it's a 2-week training. So I guess the thing is, don't treat it as an amateur. Recognize that we all need, to learn the principles of community organizing.
Thank you.
I wanted to add that the Pennsylvania Interfaith Power and Light branch of Interfaith Power and Light is a great part of the Interfaith Power and Light network, and I just posted their website link in the chat. They do great work, and there's rabbis from across the region and other ministers and people from other churches also, and it's very active. They do some great stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I'm a big fan of IPL also. Definitely connect with them.
That's how actually I was introduced to Mirele, through Rabbi Nathan Martin, who is, I think he heads or is involved in the Pennsylvania, very active in the Pennsylvania chapter. And I want to tell, if everyone, anyone else hadn't learned what I only learned recently, is that you can save all the comments in the chat section. There are 3 dots at the bottom, and you just click on that and it'll allow you to save the chat. So you'll have all of these comments and resources available to you. And
Melody Katz has her hand raised.
Yes, I do. I'm not on screen. Sorry, it's too early in the morning. But I do have a comment. When Mirele talked about community organizing. So Rabbi Anna, I guess a little over a year ago now, got the community involved in a community organizing group called Power, which is a faith-based community organizing. And while the campaign for this year is not about the environment, they are having Zoom trainings. And one of the key elements of community organizing is one-on-one conversations with people to see what they care about and how that's a great way to engage them. Tomorrow evening, I believe, is a Zoom training about having those one-on-ones. If anyone is interested, email me. I'm on the synagogue mailing list, or let me know and I can send you the link so that you could sign up if you're interested in that kind of training. And just to hook you up with that, they have lots of trainings, even if you don't necessarily want to participate in the particular campaigns they have going on now. It's a great way to get that community organizing training.
I have it as well, that link.
Can we put it on the chat if we're interested?
Yeah, I'll try to find it.
I have a question.
And there's a question from Nancy too. Go ahead.
Who, me?
Angela first, and Nancy.
Okay, I was wondering, since I live in a city, in Center City, I was wondering, I don't know, are there companies out there that do stuff on roofs, like, I don't know, wind turbine, or, I'm inspired by Dudei Shemesh, solar systems that you have in Israel, but wouldn't it be like we'll save also land to put stuff like that on roofs? And I was wondering, like, where are we on that? You know, in general, or do you know about any of that?
Well, the short answer is there's a lot of rooftop solar, and that is actually the ideal thing is to put solar panels on rooftops. But in the cities, often the rooftops are too small to really be economical to do that. I used to live in Manhattan, and that was a fantasy I had, but the footprint of the building was so small in relation to the number of people and the amount of electricity used by the building that it wasn't feasible. The best kind of places for that kind of solar are, you know, big commercial buildings. And there's a lot of creative other land uses. Our solar field, the one that my congregation supported, is actually built on a landfill, which is fantastic, you know, land use. So it was land that couldn't be used for anything else.
Can I actually speak to what her question? Because I think it was actually even larger than solar. This is Yael in California. It sounded like you were talking about doing sustainable gardening on top of rooftops and things like that. And I do agree with you. I think that it's unfortunate that they feel that apartment buildings are too small of an impact. But as they have become smarter and smarter with the development of solar panels, making them much more obtainable and smaller individuals, they actually are showing that an individual can make a larger impact if they do have solar on their roofs. But I think the large issue that I feel like I'm really appreciative to be in this Zoom chat, but the one thing that I'm not hearing being discussed at all is how are we as individuals, whether we are Jews or not Jews, but as a collective, we are in a moment in time right now where we have an opportunity to change our habits as opposed to going back to what everyone is deeming normal. How are we going to reach the people that do not believe in climate science, who are utilizing things like your last person asked? They're using tar when they're putting it on rooftops. There's nothing sustainable about tar. How are we going to introduce and educate people that just have absolutely no belief system and aren't going to change their eating habits? I mean, the fact that factory farms are hugely impacting the world, and right now they're being shut down because of COVID-19, and instead of then harvesting the animals and putting them into the food bank and helping the people that are starving, they're killing them, or we're plowing our food back into the earth. And I think that that's the greater issue. We have to talk about where we are right here, right now, environmentally, how we are going to make choices today, whether it's walking, biking, eating greener, and getting into our communities where people are not willing to make change. How do we do that? Thank you. My diatribe. My diatribe and rant at 8 a.m.
Well, I will say you brought up a lot of different very important issues in there. Mm-hmm. But I will say from my perspective as a psychologist, you know, having followed the research about this over the years, which, you know, we're still really learning, but I have become convinced that the community level is really where we can make that happen. It's very hard and very expensive and resource intensive to go person by person. So if we can convince communities to support their members and encourage them and make it easy for them to make these changes, I feel that's where, and especially as a Jewish activist, that's where we can really have an impact. So instead of going person by person, which is important, you know, they say that actually talking to your friends and neighbors is one of the key things that we can all do, because the people who aren't aware, even if they believe or they don't believe, a lot of people are just not aware of what's going on. So just talking to people more about the fact that it's a problem and we're doing something is very important. But going back to the community, if we can structure those choices and make it easy for people and make them feel like though other people around them are making those changes, that's how we can be really effective. As I said, what we can do as individuals is a drop in the bucket, but once we're doing it as a community, we can fill up the bucket. So I can tell you that if I had just signed up for that community solar by myself and asked my family to do it, we wouldn't have gotten that many people. But because we started our campaign, actually, you'll love this. We started our campaign by first signing up 10 families to sign up for the solar field. And then we asked the Rabbi Fred Dobb, Fred Sherlin-Dordab, to call up those 10 people for an aliyah. So before we even started the campaign, everyone in our congregation saw that people were already doing it. That gives it a lot of credibility. And then we went on and we used a lot of community organizing techniques. We did a lot of one-on-ones. And we also, you know, we had the choice. We could have told people, here are the 3 or 4 ways you can buy renewable energy, but we decided not to do that. We gave them one choice. This is what the congregation is doing. Do it or don't do it, but this is what we're doing. And we kept talking about it until, you know, until we basically passed a tipping point. You know, just one funny story. There was one guy at the beginning who his wife told me, oh, my husband will never do this. He'll never do it. Okay, so I didn't pursue him because the one of our principles is, you know, you start with the willing, because that's how you you get the thing roll, the momentum. I left him alone. Well, by the end, like 6 months later, this particular guy ran up to me at one of our own eggs, and he said, how do I sign up? Did I miss the chance to sign up for that community solar? So I knew it was working at that point.
That is a terrific example. And I want to add on, I'm continually trying to deal with my own impatience around getting people involved. And I keep having to remember the framework that the change process starts with educating. And that's what we've taken on as a Tikkun Olam committee. Our job is to try to build awareness through education. And then once you have the awareness, you get ideally to the acceptance phase, because there's a lot of reasons why people are saying, I'm too busy, I'm too this, I'm too that, whether they're actually formal climate deniers or just too overwhelmed by life that they can't do another thing. But you build the awareness, you try to get the acceptance, and then eventually you get to have real change.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know that we're over time. I don't know, it looks like we could keep going. I know.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that if everybody's looking at the chats, you'll see that the last 2 or 3 have a few links that could be of real interest to everybody in the community, you know, whoever's on here.
So remember, you can, again, save that. What I'll try to do is, since I'm going to send out the survey again to everyone, I will try to incorporate some of those too. And, you know, I guess to the extent that Mirele is able to stay on, you'll let us know. But the only, you know, I want to, in advance, thank you so very much for this incredibly valuable, actionable, practicable program. I am so glad that we have recorded what we have. You have taken it, didn't think it was possible, but you've taken it to yet another level, Mirele, from the previous talk we saw. I know I'm brimming with all the ideas. Instead of feeling overwhelmed, which is my normal state, I feel like you've given us so much valuable information to act on. And I look forward to following up with everybody in this group now who would like to continue our work together.
Can I just make one comment, please? Somebody's asking about solar and who does it in this area. That's Francine. And I know somebody's on the site that can really speak to that, Dara.
Well, if you look in the chat, Francine and I were talking back and forth, but obviously Mark, my husband, and I install solar energy systems. So if people have, and we're also very involved in clean energy policy advocacy locally at the state level and at the federal level. So if people have questions specifically about solar or clean energy policy, I'm happy to talk about that. I'm also the one that posted the statistics about clean energy, and I will also post a link to E2, which is a great environmental entrepreneurs, a great organization that does clean jobs reports annually, both at the country level and at the state level. So I'll put in a link to them as well here in case people want to learn more about local clean jobs in the United States.
Okay, well, yeah, we have a comment along with your comment there, Dara, from Angela about how about wind? Is there anybody that would speak to that?
Yeah, because solar, I mean, it's not always sunny, you know. Sometimes sometimes it's windier than sunny, so.
Right. So we generally find that the wind is very actually being built a lot in the middle of the country, and in the western part of Pennsylvania, there's a lot of wind farms going in. So together, and wind is also often blowing more at night, while sun obviously shines during the day. So as those technologies, so one thing I will point out is clean energy is completely a technology. There's no extra cost for fuel, for finding it, for extracting it, for transporting it, for burning it. There's no extra cost. So once you put in a solar farm or a wind farm, that's it. That's the total cost of the wind farm and the solar farm. There's no additional costs or variability or risk for fuel. So what's great about clean energy is that now that the technologies are really more commodities, not in the early stages, they're only getting cheaper and more efficient over time. So as I mentioned earlier in the chat, so industrial scale solar and wind are already cheaper than fossil fuel based energy sources. They're actually cheaper to install a whole new solar farm or a whole new wind farm and build that from scratch than to maintain existing fossil fuel power plants now. And that trend of getting cheaper and more efficient only gets stronger, only continues. There's no upswing to that trend. It's always just going to get cheaper and more efficient, versus fossil fuel based sources, which obviously now we're getting to the point where we have to find the more difficult to find coal resources, the more difficult to find oil and gas. And they're more difficult to extract and more difficult to transport from. So that has a very big variable cost on the fossil fuel side. What people don't realize is clean energy is cheaper and it's only getting cheaper. And now storage is also getting cheaper. That's the next wave of technological development. So it's already here. We're already developing great storage technologies. They're only also going to get more efficient and cheaper over time. And that'll make it easier for us to all have small distributed energy sources, microgrids, as we go forward. So that's why we need to make sure our money, our investment at the local, state, federal level gets invested in clean energy technologies, not fossil fuel infrastructure and technologies. It's a waste. It's throwing good money after bad at this point. Sorry for my drive.
Goodbye. I want to thank you all. I'm really impressed with this amazing group, and I'm looking forward to working with you on advocacy with Congress. I hope you'll get involved as a community, and I look forward to seeing you all again soon. But stay on because I see you have a lot to share.
And share the action letter as part of what I'm going to send everybody. I will send out the action letter as well as the link again. Thank you so very much. Have a great day. Bye.
Thank you.
Anybody else? How about if we'll stay on.
Mirele, thank you for your time. It was great. Yasha Koach.
Did we say that we'll stay on till 11:30 if there's that much interest? It's now 11:20 or another 5 minutes, something like that.
I have a question. So I'm sorry, I thought this started at 11. Is there any way to see what I missed? Is there a recording or anything?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, I recorded most of it. I just didn't record the introduction in like the first couple minutes because we didn't announce we were recording it, so I didn't know if I should or I shouldn't. And then I just started recording. So Francine, you'll just miss the very beginning. That's all.
Okay, and then where do I see it?
I haven't figured that out yet. And Francine, I also saved the chat, so you'll be able to see the chat.
Okay, yes.
Okay. But I don't know how you do that either yet. So.
Oh, it goes in.
Yeah, where does it save it to? I don't know.
It says it saves it in a folder, so I'm assuming that's on the Colomet Zoom account. So I'm not sure.
You'll see it in your. I don't know if it messages. I can't remember. Stephanie.
I just found it. It saves it into a folder on your computer.
Right.
I don't know how I'll ever find that folder again, but it is in the folder.
Yeah, I don't know how I'll find it either, but when I find it, I'll share it.
I found the one from another meeting, so I'll.
They make a folder called Zoom, I think.
Oh,
Okay, that works, Francine. So I think after the we are all done, it'll ask me to if I want to change the recording to an MP4 format, which I'll say yes, and that's how it's saved. And then I have to figure out how you share that. And my son just did a whole film MP4, and so he should be able to tell me.
Okay, great.
oh, good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. That was quite a wonderful hour and something.
Yes, it was.
But yeah, lots of good information and letter writing campaign coming up. I can see that.
Yeah. Let's make sure that as they put more campaigns on their website, that we circulate that at our events and write letters for that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We'll put it on the Tikkun Olam homepage. And I see that Ken was on, so we're going to get that. I will get that out, and I will send out my to-dos include sending out not only the initial survey for the mini challenges we're hoping you will accept, one or more. I'm going to send out the chat links, the chat link resources. Also, Mirele recently wrote an article that went into the Jewish Times, I think, and I'll send you that link, and I will send you the current action letter that she referenced from JEA, which you can find yourself from the Jewish Earth Alliance. So you'll get that from me. You'll have my contact information for those of you who are not part of Colamet. And any last words? Really?
Yeah, is Melody still on?
I don't see her.
I do. Well,
Yes, I'm still here. I'm still here. I just wasn't on sound or video. Yes, I'm
She
here.
still has her hand up too, Melody.
Melody, can you send me the link to that power thing?
I
Sure.
did. I put it in the chat
It's in the
Oh,
chat.
you did. Okay. Okay.
tomorrow night. You're there.
Thank you.
And Melody, you still have your hand up. Did you have
I
something?
don't know if I may have done that by accident or it's still there. How do you get rid of, do you get, I don't know how to get rid of it from the first time. But
I just did.
Just ignore it. It's fine.
Okay. Well, again, million thanks to everybody for your participation, your energy, your presence, your commitment, and we'll see you on the other side.
And thank you, Susan and Jean-Luc, for heading up the committee.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Anybody who wants to join,
It was a good committee with
we want
Randy and Dara.
more people to be involved. So please, you know, any way you can commit. It doesn't have to be major commitment. Maybe you'll help with individual events.
Yeah, project by project may be of interest.
Project by project. You don't even, may I say, you don't even have to be part of Colamet officially. We'll take all the help we can get if I'm allowed to say that. When, you know.
Well, of course you are.
Yeah. Yes.
Right. Interest is the only, interest and ability to follow up are the only criteria. Judy's apologizing for the dog.
Yeah, for the dog. Yeah.
Dogs can help too, you know. They have. I currently like. Have you all seen? I'll end with one of the many amusing memes that have come up. Is, you know, the dog who says after how many 45 days being quarantined, you know, said I don't think I was really meant to be an emotional support dog.
No, I didn't hear it.
Okay, yep. So on that note, we'll be emotionally supportive to one another. Okay.
Okay.
Very good.
Okay, so I'm going to officially end the meeting.
Thank you, Randy.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.